Testing the sound, 1, 2, 3. Testing the sound, 1, 2, 3. Testing the sound, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so today is going to be on, we're going to do a little bit of domain-specific shell. What does that mean? That is going to be a command shell. My browser is already confused. Let's make sure the stream is working. I've screwed that up a bazillion times. So it's a command shell that allows you to type in commands just like you would from PowerShell, for example. As we got open here in the background, I just want it to be over a set of domain-specific commands as opposed to change directory and PowerShell commands. I want to be able to maintain state across one command to another. And let's see, I've got some goals here set up. Today I'm a little bit better prepared. So I found after Friday's session with Ardalis, where we decided we would just try something new that we've neither one ever done before, that did not turn out as well as I had hoped. Building a quick action inside of Visual Studio is much harder than I thought. Well, actually it wasn't so much that it was hard because we got the template up and running really quickly, but we were trying to do something specific and we thought we could just copy the code, and we couldn't find the code to copy on Visual Studio. I've got a tweet out there asking for that and nobody's responded yet. So anyway, what we want to do is we want to support tab completion and we want to support session state, and I want to be able to use mediator commands from our business logic. So we build most of my stuff using Mediator, and I should be able to just drop those Mediator commands into a command shell. So for example, if you had a REST API, well, last week we did the Discord bot, right? So the same thing that we were trying to do inside of Discord is using a Mediator command. We're going to try to do the same with a shell today. So let's get started. I already created a repo out on GitHub, but I'll post that up at the end because I don't want to. It's got stuff already in it, and I don't want to cheat and go ahead. I'm going to basically redo what I've done already live here, which is, like I said, a little bit more prepared by actually having done it. Not completely done it, but I've gotten part way and I've got some decent notes, so this time we're a little bit better off. What we're going to do, instead of using the .NET New template, we're going to use, let me create inside this, this is fine. Let's just do it right here in this live directory. We're going to use the .NET New worker, which creates a background worker using the generic host and iHosted service. Actually, it uses background service, which implements the iHosted service interface. Let's say -o, and what are we calling this bad boy? We're going to call it domain-specific shell. So if that pastes in there. Remember, UBS sucks the life out of my machine, so things get a little bit slower when I'm live streaming. Anyway, there we go. We're going to start right there. So that should create our, hurry up thing. Yeah, that should create a project. So we're going to go into this domain-specific shell. Take a look at what we've got. So we've got basically a project, some settings, which is what's nice about that template is it does create your configuration settings for you, configures logging. Let me cat, actually instead of that, let's just make sure that it builds first. .NET build, and it better, did before. But this will pull in the NuGet packages. I have NuGet auto reload shut off on my Visual Studio, so if I build it once from the command line, it will pull down all the NuGet packages. Whereas if I try to build inside of Visual Studio, it'll be like, hey, I don't have these packages. So that's why I like to do it here first. But now we've got a solution project. We need a solution project. For today, on my blog post that will follow this, and the one on GitHub, it will have a solution project. But for now, why not? Let's just make a solution. Let's just put it in the same spot. .NET New SLN isn't hard to do, and it should make one for us. Right there it is. So let's go domain-specific solution and fire that up in Visual Studio. And we'll take a look at what's already there. Rule number 1, remind yourself, is to switch your scene back to the live scene so people can see the screen. And also, complaint number 3 or 4 is make sure that I have it so that you can see the whole console when I'm running. Alright, so I'm looking at it right now in the designer. Things look okay. The stream cuts out occasionally from my browser, but as long as it's working for everybody else, I don't care. I've tested that the sound comes through. Alright. Yes, so I'm down there in the bottom corner. Alright, now let's go see what it looks like from Visual Studio. We've got the solution, but nothing in it. Let's add the project that we created. Add existing project. That should show up here in a second, and there it is. Domain-specific project. So again, we want a shell, we want to be able to have tab completion, and we want to be able to have session state, that we can maintain state across each particular command is one of the goals. Whether we get through all of those or not, I'm not exactly sure. Okay, so this all built. Let's take a look at what we have here. So program, see, it's using the create host builder, and it uses the default builder for us, which uses the generic host behind the scene, which is quite nice. And all it does is register this hosted service, which these will automatically get configured and kicked off for us. And what does the worker do? Doesn't do a whole lot. He just has, it's got the logger configuration that show you that the template's already got logging configured. And the way the background service works, you don't need to implement the start async or the stop async. It'll do that for you automatically. All you need is this execute async. This is an abstract class. And all this little guy does is say worker running at blah, 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 and wait another second and print that out again. So if we execute this right now, our console should pop up on the wrong screen, of course. Over here, bring it on. And there you have it. See, domain specific worker, domain specific worker. All right, so we can kill this guy. All right, so the basics of it are working. Now let me get my notes back over here. So what's the next step that we want to do? Let's see. Let's try to follow this thing in order. Make source directory. I go into quite the detail of where to organize it. Oh, I know what I want to do. I want an editor config file because the default template, well, because we want to be able to establish the coding standards right up front. So let's pop this bad boy open here. This is my cheat right here. And we have an editor config. I also have a git repo with what my editor config would be. II space dot, that's complaining about. And let's go up here. Editor config. Copy that into the one we just created. That's good enough, as long as it's in there. Okay, so now we've got an editor config. You'll start to see the little things show up. Doesn't like this, doesn't like that, doesn't like this, whatever. And it's going to complain about this. And now it's the new my specific rules. For one thing is I like my using clauses on the inside. We're not going to talk about editor config and my preferences though. We're just going to try to clean this up as quickly as possible. And this is going to be, oh, and like I said, I do have a cheat already. But I'm not going to show you that guy. It's going to be my cheat over here. And that's just to make some things quicker so you don't have to watch me type, which I found that these shows get sleepy if you have to watch everything type. So all I'm doing right now is cleaning up things according to my coding convention. I like my class name. See, this is a host builder context. Why is it named host context? If it's a host builder context, which name's right? The class name or the variable name? I want them to be the same name. I do prefix them with an A as a rule, and that is because I have my reasons. I want to be able to gives me the opportunity to reuse that variable. A lot of times you'll have a class variable named something, and you'll have a local variable named something. This gives me a parameter that gets passed in. It reads pretty well as well. Configure services needs a host builder context and a service collection. Well, actually, this doesn't need it. This functional method does here. All right, so this is complaining about use expression body. So I prefer this when it's a one-liner. So it's a little bit, I guess, slightly cleaner. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm on the fence. But that's that's the coding standard I'm going with now, which the key is, in my opinion, is to have one so that at least we'll have consistency. Okay, so there's not too bad. This is complaining about the same thing. And that is, it wants the expression body lambda goes off the screen, so I didn't, which we can do. All right, so now this guy is no longer complaining. We've got some extra stuff up here that we may or may not need. We'll just ditch it for now. Clean that up so that looks better. Worker, I've got a few things in here that I can't stand. I don't like my private variables. All my class variables are uppercase. So I fixed that. This guy here should be a logger. Now notice IntelliSense solves a ton of this stuff for you really quickly. Here it's a stopping token, and here it's a cancellation token. Again, which is it? Is there any reason why this wouldn't be called a cancellation token? None that I can think of. So we fixed that. Now I believe move those inside, which you can do with a quick click as well. And we may want link later, but let's clean it up for now. All right, so the only thing else I typically do is I run CodeMade on everything, which will sort and organize things in a consistent order. So you'll see made is above create host builder, but alphabetically, if you have nothing else left, oh, I probably will also make these internal. Try to reduce the scope of everything as much as I can. Just had a ding go. Check and make sure we're still functional. We are. Okay. So just some cleanup work so we don't have any errors, warnings, messages, whatever. Actually, in order to see that that actually works, you need to do a cleanup here, say yes, and then do .NET build again, and that would give me some fresh response from in here. And I don't have any messages that need cleaned up. So we've eliminated our technical debt from the template, but we do have some nice features here giving us this and so forth. All right, next thing I want to do, and we're going to try to go pretty quick. I think it's more interesting to cover more material, and you can watch the YouTube video if I go too fast, than it is to like I've been doing, going and you watch me Google search everything. Doesn't mean that I'm better, just means that I've Google searched before I went live. So let's see, now that the code's cleaned up, we want to enable console support. Now I'm a little bit confused actually as to what this does, because if you notice, so what we're going to do here is we're going to run console async, but if you notice when I ran this app already, console pops up and says, press, well, it says it over here on the left. Let's get over here. Actually, it doesn't tell you anything. So I have to hit Control-C to kill it. And there you go. And it did come out gracefully. Application is shutting down. So the host seems to have stopped correctly. We can close that window. What we want to do is we want to add console support, and I believe the way you're supposed to do that is run console async enables console support. Builds and starts the host and waits for the Control-C SIGINT and SIGTERM to shut down. SIGINT is signal interrupt and terminate, I believe, are the two, but Control-C should stop. So how we're going to implement that is in this program, and instead of calling, we're going to do CodeMade on this. I was telling you before. See how all things consistent, internal static void, internal static, C comes before M. So we do Control-M paste, and CodeMade will alphabetically sort those. I have some rules on which order they go in. You have to check out CodeMade. It's kind of handy. I like it because well, it remains consistent, right? So if everybody does it, then we don't have a bunch of pull requests or moves based off of somebody drug this thing from one place to the other. Okay, so next on the agenda. Oh, we didn't do this. So what we want to do, now interestingly, I thought it would be run that command from Microsoft, run console async. I thought would be here, right? But it isn't. It actually does the build for you. I think it actually registers some other things as well. But it's actually there. So now, if we run, it's not going to do what I thought it would do. We'll get there. We run this thing. You are going to get the message that says press something to automatically close when debugging stops, enable tools, blah, blah, blah. We don't care about that one. What you did get was you got worker running, application is shutting down. Now I expected it to wait to SIG-int or SIG-term in order to stop, right? That's kind of what we thought was going on there, right? But that didn't happen. Now, if we don't register our worker here, let's switch this to use block method. Whoops, Control Z. I don't want that one to use block method. I want this one to use block method. Right? And then let's just comment this out. Now, what would you expect this thing to do? Now it should sit there and wait, right? I would think. There's really nothing for it to do. Right? There is nothing's happening. Right? So let's see what it did. So it just ran again and quit. So what you would typically do is put your loop inside this main, and then I guess we're going to do a little bit different because I want to run it as a hosted service. So let's get to it. I want to organize a little bit. I'm going to create a new folder over here. Add new folder, hosted services. I'll probably have services and hosted services over there at some point, but I want this worker to be in there. Stop asking me if I want to move things. Okay, so there's that. All right. So we did the enable console support. So next thing we want to do is we want to start working on our command line loop. We're going to leave the worker in here because that shows how we can do a background task. So I want to leave that in there, but we're going to create a new one for our command line. So our command line could be running, and we also have background tasks running at the same time. Actually, you can have a bunch of services. So a lot of this is, I learned a lot of this from, well, Microsoft Docs for one, a handful of Andrew Locke things. Also, Ping Pong on Tangram is what got me started down this path of how he creates his own loop. Hopefully some of the things that we're going to do here will help make that Tangram app a little bit better, and we can do a pull request on that. Maybe next week after we get this completely vetted, we'll see. But nonetheless, that started me thinking down the path of well, what I was thinking first of all is, why do I want to be inside of my own shell? And the simple answer is I don't know how else you're going to maintain state across commands without knowing what shell you're in. So in PowerShell, I could do it, right, with just saying, hey, this shell returns some value, and PowerShell could save it. Then I would have to run everything in PowerShell. Instead, this just creates its own shell, and I maintain state limited exclusively to whatever the heck I want inside that state. But you need what's called a read, well, typically it's called a REPL, read, evaluate, print loop is what REPL stands for. I really prefer, because the print's not necessarily accurate, It's more like an output. So I really like to think of it more as a request response loop. And given what we know about request and response, what is Mediator based off of? Mediator is based off given a request, I get a response. One thinks to themselves, that's pretty easy to match those two things up. So that's what we're going to try to do. Given a set of any business logic from Mediator, we should be able to convert that into a command and return the result. Now, what you do with that result, as far as display goes, is a different story. But for now, what we want to do is we want to just build this loop. And we're going to call that command line. So we're going to create a new folder in here. And why I'm creating a folder is because I know that there's going to be more than one thing in it eventually. To start with, though, we're going to create this called, what did I decide to name it? Command line hosted service. Shift F2. If you don't have Shift F2, that's a MADS extension on creating, quickly creating a file. It'll pull out it will pull out the extension and base it off of that as far as the template goes. Okay, so command line hosted service, and this guy needs to inherit from, just like the worker did, just like the worker here, inherits from background service. That's how we're going to run it. So we'll pull that using in, and we want to implement this abstract class, which uses this execute function. I don't care about the naming violation. What I want to do is using block for now. We can fix the naming violation, which makes no sense to me. And, all right, we don't want to throw. All right, so what do we want to do inside this thing? Well, first of all, let's leave the, I guess that, Control-Z, but I've done it, right? Let's leave that in there just so it'll compile. And before we forget, let's register this service. And right here is how it's done. Inside the program.cs, notice there's no startup here. There is no use startup. Of course, we could create a startup class and move those over. And I would be tempted to do that. Huh, I didn't fix. Oh, it's complaining about. That's going to go away in a second. I would be tempted to do that, and I have done that in other places to try to maintain consistency, because I think it's a lot easier for people to get up to their first line of productive code if you can read the code base and things maintain the same pattern. But having looked at generic host and the way they're doing it, I'm not sure that that startup is going to maintain a consistent pattern. Oh, by the way, we're using Preview 6, .NET Core 3 Preview 6 for this template and all the code that I'm writing here. So we can use C# 8 as well if we like. All right, but I don't think I'm going to get any specific C# 8. So that's the service we're trying to do, and we need to uncomment that, and we're going to put this command line service here, place there, and so now we haven't forgotten to register our service, so we're good. So now that thing should, now this will automatically kick it off and do whatever we do in here. So let's test that. First thing we can do, console.writeLine, yeah, hello world, and we don't need to throw anymore, and he's going to complain because it's asynchronous. We're going to just return task.complete to get the compiler to be quiet, and then run. What's interesting is I'm about 26 minutes into this thing, and it took me about an hour to write this much documentation. So, okay, so let's see what happened. I'll bring it on over here. Again, there's nothing that's stopping it from running. But notice we did get our hello world, right? We don't have the worker running, so let's uncomment this guy. And order does matter. The order of which these are registered is the order that they would fire. So if you're blocking on one of these in the execute method, if you're blocking on that execute method, then these wouldn't fire. Let's see if we can prove that. All right, so let's change our command line hosted to that, and here we're going to say console dot readline, which we're going to use in a minute because that's how we're going to get our loop going. But for now, this is just so that it doesn't do anything but sit there and wait for us to type something in. And then we're going to return a completed task. Let's go back to our program file. So which one we have going first? Worker's going to fire up. He's non-blocking, right? From the way the worker was working, let's see, what does he do? He's sitting there, and he's going to do task delay and fire off again. All right. Let's see. Yep. Okay, so he's going to go first, so he should be firing up and running while we sit there and wait on this. Let's test it. Run. Notice we see nothing because that console is sitting there waiting. If I hit enter though, you see that the domain worker, the console was locked up because basically console.readWrite, but the worker has been running every second from the beginning. Okay, so I don't know what that tells me. I think they're both running in parallel, which is what my expectations were. So I think they're both running, but let's see if it changes behavior. I do know they start up in the order that they received. Who cares? I digress. Command line hosted service is what we want to work on. We're trying to build a loop. A loop isn't so terribly difficult. What we're going to do is do a loop. While true would work to start with. Let's make the simplest possible loop that we can. Console.readline, simplest possible functional loop, I guess. Console.writeLine. Let's make this var, won't be a var, it'll be a string line equals console.writeLine. And then we're going to just write back what we read in. And let's extract this out, introduce a constant for true, introducing local constant, local constant. Why do we want it to be a constant? Let's just introduce this as a true, and then let's get rid of the constant because let's call it loop. So while loop, we continue to loop, and let's have a way to get out of the loop. If line equals exit, then loop equals false. How about that? That get us out? Now, it should just repeat back whatever we have. I believe. Should. Let's double check here. Alright, when you see the side of my head, I'm looking at the other monitor, which shows me what's going on the stream, which is good. Looks fine, I believe. Alright, so the next thing we want to do so we've registered it. And we've got a basic loop in there. So let's see what we can do if we run this bad boy. Now, I beg to say, so I'm 31 minutes in, and I've made more progress than we would have made in a whole hour and a half, probably. All right, so there we go. You see this thing coming in? It's running. Am I getting, for one, that logger is logging to the console, and that's annoying, right? So we can't see what's happening in our other thread. If I type hi and hit enter, you'll see it is working. And then if I type bye, enter, bye, how about exit? Yay, so exit got us out. Now, we don't really care about the worker thread at the moment, so what we're going to do is just not register it. And now let's run it, and it should look a little bit better. Of course, it doesn't fire up. Over here. Now, you see, it's just sitting there. You wouldn't know, right? But hi, hello, yo, foo, bar, exit. And there we go. So I see a few things that we probably want to do. The loop is blocking, which really, as long as it's in a hosted service, do I really care? Maybe not. But notice that this here should have been printed when you start, right? It's trying to tell you that, hey, we're running something in the background. So in order for that to happen, we would need to not block, so that needs to come back. So we'd have to basically spawn off like a hosted service. But I'm trying to run the command line itself as a hosted service, so not exactly sure how I want that to work. But we're good enough for now to show what we're trying to do. Next, we want to, what do I want to do? Do I want to do, let's go look at making this guy, this loop, a little bit more functional. Tab completion is one of our goals and objectives. Let me pull this guy up over here that I've got. So there's a couple things I want to do. I want to, so I've got hosted services here, command line there. I want to make this loop a little bit better. All right. Right, so how we're going to do that is I did some research and I looked around on the internet and I found the library. Actually, the guy who wrote the library is from Nigeria, and he was just hired by Microsoft, I want to say like 3 weeks ago. Actually hasn't updated this library in a year. Hopefully that changes soon. Actually, we're going to use another library from Microsoft called system.commandline, and that is how I'm going to build my commands. You've seen it before on my console template from earlier sessions, but I'm hoping that this read line capability, right now the read line does have a history that's automatically maintained. Well, let's show that. Let's see. So if I ran this again, and I type hi, yo, 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 I hit up arrow. See, I get yo, 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 and hi. So they do have some stuff built in, right? But if I hit the tab key, it puts a tab in my output, and I would prefer that to have some way to say, hey, I want some suggestions and pass me in some sort of method. That does not exist at the moment inside. So I'm hoping that they hired this guy, and we're going to go look for this repo right now. We're going to add that in next. Manage NuGet packages, and it's going to be called, really sophisticated, called readline. let's see, is this the one that I want? It is. So this is his site here, and you can follow him on Twitter. So this is the capability that you have. You can move around beginning to end of line, so forth and so on. Quite a bit of stuff, but really the nice thing is tab auto completion is available. It'll be disabled if you don't set an auto completion handler, which we're gonna configure that here real quick. So anyway, that is, I'll throw that in the chat. Maybe I can figure out how to chat. Okay. So from live stream, it gives me the ability to do the chat from in there. So I can throw that in there. That's that one. Okay, so I was going to say you can find him on Twitter as well. Maybe, if his page ever comes up. There you go. And I think there's his Twitter handle right here. And go follow him. And let's hope, see, he says, well, it says some things we probably shouldn't be saying right here, but it says he just got hired in at Microsoft as well. All right, so I'm going to add this package. Speaking of which, I'm going to scratch a small itch. Oh, guess not. I closed it already, so no, I won't. All right, once we've got that package in place, now we can use it. So instead of this console.readline, actually have a readline.read is the method, and we need to use this. Did it install? It did install, so what is the readline? I don't know. Why didn't control dot pull that in with the usings? I'm not sure. Let me go use my cheat, right? That's what I have it for. It is readline, but it looks like it's spelled with a capital L. Ah, there we go. Okay, so readline.read, and we get this new nice little feature that where we can put a prompt in front of it. And we're going to call string prompt is going to be equal to freeze team. And what do we want to put? What's PowerShell? What's PowerShell use for the character? They use that little lambda thing, right? Can I copy that? That should have copied it there. Yeah, there we go. And semicolon, right? So that should be the prompt. And you just pass in the prompt into this README, into this read. And then what I want to do is I want to store this thing again in line. Don't need this. And I do want to trim the end just in case somebody puts a bunch of spaces, we don't care. Okay, so now we've got that. Readline also has a history. So after we do the console.writeLine, so as soon as we read it, let's add it to the history. I believe it's supposed to automatically add, and it makes total sense to me that it automatically should add, but I don't believe it works. But I can manually add it. So should be a bug on the repo. Hold on one second. All right. So we're running it, and now you see, one thing you see is that the question mark is there instead of our lambda. And that's because, guess what? That lambda is not in your basic ASCII character set. So in order to get it to do what you want, you'd have to add in, change the page, UTF, whatever. I don't care. So exit. Let's get rid of the lambda. Let's switch it to a more traditional $sign. Okay, we were going to test the Control F5 and test the history on this thing. So yo or hi, yo or you, whatever, and then up arrow. See, up arrow does nothing. Down arrow does nothing. Yeah, so it's not there. So we actually went backwards, regressed with this device for the moment, but it's not a end of the world type of thing. It's actually rather simple fix. So read line.history or add history. Oh, maybe history isn't enabled. That's a good question. History.enable equals true. Alright, let's move that up here to outside that loop. Now let's see if it runs. It works. Maybe it's disabled by default. Okay, how many times is that thing gonna open the wrong spot, right? Yo, foo, bar, up arrow. Ah, there we go. Not a bug. Just disabled by default. Alright, so solve that problem. Okay, so now we've got that. Now we've got this. Console.write line. And that should do what we want it to do pretty well, frankly. So the only other thing that I want to do is right up here where we set that to enabled. I want to enable that auto completion feature. So auto completion handler is going to be equal to, we have to create a class, excuse me, and what better name to call it than auto creation handler. And let's say generate property, generate field, generate read only. Yeah, generate property. Okay, so there's our auto completion handler. And now we're going to take that service and we're going to need that auto completion handler in there. So let's improve this guy a little bit. And I'm going to create a constructor and inject that auto completion handler. And then we'll register one. So dependency injection. Oh, and momentarily bear with me because we're going to get a package here, of course, right in the middle of the session. Somebody come? Alright, so Carrie's going to deliver a battery for the phone, so that's a good thing. Sorry for the interruption. Alright, what we're going to build is this constructor. There'll be another interruption when she actually shows up with the thing. They call ahead, and actually quite friendly. It's actually rather nice. The language barrier is a little problem for me still. Alright, so I'm going to need this auto completion handler. I'm looking to see what else I might need. Only thing else I can think of is a logger. So let's implement that as well. And I'm torn on the fence between making these private properties or not. Okay, she's here. Be right back. I guess Carrie didn't know that I was streaming today, so package deliveries occur. Alright, so we're going to add a logger in here. Like I said, I'm a little on the fence whether I should make these private read-onlys, which is what I'm going to do in this case, or private properties. But we're going to make them private read-only for here. And then if you have your properties declared, come up in here and say generate constructor. You can pick the things you want to just be put in there. I don't need this bool loop to be passed in. It's going to maintain that state here by itself for the time being, is what I'm thinking. And I like these to be on lines by themselves. Now, in C# we put these squiggly brackets lined up. Now my question is, if that makes sense to us, and it does, why does this not make sense? Why shouldn't this be like that? I mean, would we be prejudiced against squigglies versus open brackets? Just because, in my opinion, I think it looks fine. I think we're just used to seeing it next to that, indicating that, hey, I'm about to do something. But I really don't see why it would be any different. But I've seen absolute no one do this, which does, to me, seem logically inconsistent. But I digress. Alright, so we're going to pass in. How did that happen? Oh, Control Z. Auto completion handler. Alright, so now we've got the properties, those things can be passed in. Now we've got them available, and we can set it to here. And what we don't have is, we don't have those things registered. So we're going to need to register an iAutoCompletion handler inside of program.cs. Right? So, a service collection dot add. I'm guessing singleton makes sense, doesn't it? iAutoCompletion handler, and we're going to name the class the same. Like that, we should be able to. Wait a minute. System has iAutoCompletion handler in it? That's a Microsoft class, or is that just pulled in? Oh, they're just overriding readline with theirs. Okay, I was gonna say I never heard of that. All right, instead of using their own namespace. All right, so autocomplete handler is right there. Doesn't exist. We're going to generate a class in a new file. Sure. And I don't like where it is. I'm going to put that up here. That's why I created a folder. All right, so now domain specific shell. Let's put that in the hosted services. I don't want it in a command line. So auto completion handler. And what does that need to do? It needs to implement this, right? Auto completion handler, autocomplete handler. We can pull that in, and then we need to implement the interface. Okay, so there we go. I have no idea what separators does. Let's get this down here. But I think it's just a string, right? Oh, look at that. It's throws on both things. Yuck. Alright, so we're gonna go steal my autocomplete handler that I already got written here, because it's gonna be a lot simpler. And what I want is this character array here for what potential things are separators. This is just some defaults that I got. So we're gonna go with that, and then for the get suggestions, we're just going to fix command line names in here, and we're going to say return foo. What am I returning? An array? My new string array. And you can initialize that like this. Bar. Right? And then that's going to complain about it wants it to be use expression body. And the purple is complaining about the spelling, and this is complaining about missing a bracket, I guess. Oh, it's complaining about that. There we go. And that's complaining about should be on the inside. Okay, so now we've got this default thing, so no matter what we get, no matter when we invoke the tab, we're always going to get back foo and bar. So they aren't very good suggestions, but they're nonetheless suggestions for tab completion. So let's see. Let's see if this builds first. Autocomplete error cannot be found. You're missing using directive or assembly reference. I am. Alright, so now we've registered the autocompletion handler. That guy injected it, he set it. Alright, so if that guy fired up before that guy, it shouldn't matter what registration order they're in because they actually start on the run, not on the collections setup. But nonetheless, okay, so put it there because it makes me feel better. And then this guy, move that guy up there, put them together, whatever. Actually, then move him all the way to the top. That's the way I want it. Third time's charm. Okay, so now if we run this guy, see if it builds. We should have a nice little prompt. We should still get exits, but now if we hit tab, get foo and bar, foo and bar, foo and bar. Okay? Now, if I type in DOG tab, I'm still going to get foo and bar. Like I said, they aren't very good suggestions, but nonetheless, that's what they are. But at least the infrastructure is working to get us there. So we can put a breakpoint here. Put a breakpoint here, and should be able to see. So he's going to pass in the command line, which is the part that's been given. So if I type in dog, it should come in as dog. What the heck index is going to be? I'm not exactly sure. Maybe that's the position of the args that you're in with these separators. Let's test it. Let's see. Run. Okay, so I'm going to enter in dog tab. So I expect this to be dog and this to be 0 or 1. 0. Okay. Now if I put a space and I put chicken tab, I expect this to be food chicken, and this is going to be, whoa, 4. I guess I don't understand what the heck that is. How do you get food chicken and this is 4? A index. Oh, maybe the foo fits in there someplace. Like it's the index of where one of your suggestions. No, I actually have no clue what the index is for. No, no idea. No idea. It works perfectly fine without me knowing what it is because I don't use it, but nonetheless, I don't know what it is. Okay, so now there's an exit for that, so this works pretty good. So the next thing we want to bring in is the system.command line, and we're going to use their parser to parse the command line versus just doing it as a single line. All right, so let's fix up our little loop here to do some different things. Well, let's first import the system command line. Let's go get that package. Manage NuGet references. I might need to. Yeah, I might need to update. Let's see. Do I have it in here? Oh, I do. I have all of the nightly stuff, so we can get this because we're going to be using an alpha project yet again. Another alpha project. System.command line experimental. And it should be system command line experimental. Let's see, the one that I used yesterday, or when I did this, which I think was yesterday, 19315.3. And 19315.3. We're already on 317.1. Let's wing it and let's hope that it works, right? Just a couple more nightly builds since then. I'm guessing nothing's changed too significantly. That's not always the case. All right, so we've installed that guy, and what he has is a class called parser, and a command line builder. And we're going to use that parser in our loop instead of, well, our loop doesn't do anything right now. And then our execute cycle, we're going to actually execute these commander commands. So let's go ahead and add mediator while we're at it. Manage NuGet packages, mediator, search mediator, yep, install mediator, yep, and then we're going to want to go ahead and do mediator.extensions. Mediator extensions Microsoft dependency injection. Mediator extension Microsoft dependency injection fixed. Who the heck is Alex has done something there. 512. So that was a I guess he made an intermediate fix or something. All right, we're going to go to 7.0. And use the official one for that. All right, so we pulled in our dependencies that I need. Let's create, so we've got hosted services. We're going to try to just basically put the command line in. And then let's, typically what would happen, these commands that we would be running would have been part of some business logic somewhere else. Here we're just going to make some commands to test with. So we're going to create a new folder called commands. I've got a sample command that should work just fine. And let me go copy that guy. Open folder in File Explorer. Let's take the whole sample. Maybe copy. Let's do the same thing here. Open a folder in File Explorer and paste. Okay, so may have some namespace things we want to clean up here. Yeah, we do. So we don't want to be here. We want to be in, what is this? Our domain specific shell dot commands dot sample. Sure, why not? And everybody should be familiar with Mediator. They watch my show, but if not, that's a Jimmy Bogard's library. You should check out. Fluent validation is missing. We didn't install that one. Fluent validation does exactly this. Lets us validate a command. We're going to use that. I think you've seen that in like a Tangram video early on, maybe the first one we went over fluent validation. But let's add references here again. Not references, NuGet packages is what I want. Manage NuGet packages and kill this and this fluent validation in the list. Not yet, but surely far. There we go, fluent validation, install. Oh, that's 8.5 preview 2. Do I want that? 8.4. You know, the preview might be good to go because that's going to add some DI stuff for us, but I don't care right now. Let's just install the preview or the latest release version. Okay, so 8.4 it is. And all right, so now fluent validation works. So now we got, what you've got is a sample. Okay, so what we're doing is we have parameter 1, parameter 2, parameter 3, and this is a string, this is an int, this is an int, and this is where your documentation is going to come in. Sample command, some string, some integer. We're actually going to use XML doc to read this stuff to pull in the help for when you guys type help onto the screen. That's the idea. This is the handler of what it's actually going to do, which it doesn't do anything except print out to the console what 3 parameters were passed to it. And this is the validator, which says that the first parameter needs to be minimum length of 3 characters long. The second parameter needs to be greater than or equal to 0, and the third parameter needs to be less than 10. And then there's a special comparison here that says validate parameter 3 is greater than parameter 2. So it has to be less than 10 but bigger than this one. Just something that you can see how validation works. Okay, so let's see if we build right now. All right, we have no errors there. Next thing we want to do. All right, so those are commands that we've got. What we're going to need to do is then we're going to need to add some validation to our pipeline. With Mediator, it's a collection of pipelines. Right now, there's nothing in the pipeline other than the standard, you know, whatever the handler is, call it. But we want to add something that before you call it, we're going to actually validate the command. So where we're going to do that is a new folder, and we're going to call it, pipeline. I used to call it behaviors, but pipeline actually makes more sense, I think. And I've got one over here already. Let me close some windows so that I don't get so many up that I can't see straight. And then open 4. All right, so see, I call it behaviors here. Copy and paste. So validation behavior. Now it's okay to make it called behavior here, I guess, because that's what Jimmy calls them. In this case, it's actually pre-processor because nothing happens post-processor. The things that manage both pre and post are called behaviors. Anyway, let's go to domain-specific shell, and I don't need these things. Let's just call it pipeline. Maybe the namespace will stick this in, and there's our validation behavior, which does what? It says I want a collection. This is the constructor. Wants a collection of all validators, right? IEnumerable validator of tRequest. There's your validators, and then I go and look from that collection. I say validators where I pick these guys to validate against. If validation failures.counts equals 0, validation failures for each, I build up, and then I throw an exception with all the validation failures in it. I wouldn't have to throw an exception, but that's the simplest way for right now for what we're trying to do. If you don't like exceptions as for validation, you can pass back the validation results, right? But that's what we're going to do for this. Okay, so there's some pipeline behavior. We've got us a command, a sample command. Now we need to be able to convert that sample command, and we need that system, our system.pipe, our system command line experimental dude is included. We need to use that. So where do we do that? So that's going to be in the project called Time Warp Command Line Builder. And let's do that here. I've got commands, I've got hosted service, which is also going to run the command line. That's just the loop. I've got the commands themselves, and then I've got the system command line thing. So I'm going to create one more folder. You can always refactor this afterwards. And I'm going to call this overusing this command line term, am I not? This is system command line stuff. And what I want is to use from our template, go open up. I'm just going to copy and paste some stuff again. So we're at 2:08, and we're only going to go for an hour and a half, but I'd like to see how far we can get. So command line, we got this Time Warp command line builder. Let's take him first, copy, and paste him in there. Let's go over what's in that. Let's fix his namespace and say domain specific shell command line. He wants this XML doc reader, which is what I told you before. We're going to parse through the documents. So what this command line builder does, I don't want to go over it entirely because I've gone over it before, and it's a part of the Time Warp console app template. So what we do is it parses, it goes through, wait, let's start here. Command line builder is the system command line command for building up commands. They have their own command object. This object right here is from that library. But I don't want to use this manually. So what I'm trying to do is I map my mediator commands to their commands. And that's what this does. So here it says use mediator commands, and I go through every one of theirs, every one of the mediator commands that I find, and I create a command object for theirs, for the system command line. So here it's like build command for request. So we go in there, you see I'm going to create a new command. I'm going to replace the name. I don't want the request. Request is by the convention to be on the end. I could make this replace a handful of things depending on what you name them. But that's the convention. And then I want to go ahead and replace that as the name. The description you're going to get from the XML doc reader. And then the handler is going to say, just call this generic mediator command handler, which we haven't added in yet. So let's start to clean this stuff up. First of all, let's go get this XML doc reader, which I have over here as well. I'm going to paste that in here. So this thing can become its own little assembly and reused. I think maybe the whole service you can make, just add a shell to things, which would be kind of interesting to see how that plays out. Here's an XML doc reader, and what it does is it goes out and parses the XML associated to it, so you can get description for name, given a type, get description for property info, etc. So this is how you're going to build your help. All right, so there's that one. Let's close that guy. He's self-contained, and no errors in that. So now XML, oops, there was an error in that because we didn't fix the work namespace. And that's going to be domain specific shell. Okay, now he cleared him up. So the startup file is how I did it. Remember how I told you I could move things into a startup file? Well, this was my thinking on this guy. And for expediency's sake, I'm going to copy that startup file that I have over here. Take a look at what it does. So this is the configuration of the command line builder. So the system.command line is thinking that this thing is going to run solely as a console app outside. And when you first Tangram session, that's what I'm talking about. So we're running, if you go back and you look, we created I forget which command it was, but we created a command that runs from the PowerShell. It runs this thing and then it invokes this command. It's using exactly the same thing. This here tool, a couple versions older. But what I wanted, but now it's going to operate inside the hosted service, which means it's going to maintain its state. Again, thanks to Ping Pong and the way he does it inside of the Tangram app, I'm using that same similar kind of concept. All right, so we don't want these behaviors. We want to fix this domain specific shell. All right, so we got domain specific shell command line, that's correct. And we want this. And this won't be behaviors, this will be pipeline. Actually, I don't know what it'll be, who cares, it'll pull it back in on its own. Let's just let this fire up. Okay, so validation behavior. That's the one we want. Sample validator. Gonna pull in all these guys. So when we configure this thing, we're now taking the configure services gets called with the passing in the collection, right? So we're going to be using the same container across the board for all of these particular items. All right, so that fires up. Timer command line builder. Let's go back to here. What are we missing? Oh, the mediator command handler. Yes, we're gonna need that. And that is actually this guy here. I believe he's in here. Why we didn't call it file that. Mediator command handler, like that. Okay. Fix the namespace. Domain specific shell. Just like that. So this mediator command handler does the magic that we went through some time ago. Tangram, we couldn't figure out how to get it to work. Well, we've got it to work. It works here. This will go through and set all the properties, and it'll even take a result that gives me back a result type. I fixed that bug. I think we had it on episode 2 or 3 that you saw. So now we can handle any of those. There, I even quoted the Stack Overflow where a guy assisted with some of this. So nonetheless, this will go through and map whatever properties are coming from this parse result, which is parse result is part of system.command line. So it will map those into the mediator command, right? So we build the commands, and the parser is going to give us his commands back. We're going to take those commands, we're going to map them to mediator commands, we're going to launch those mediator commands. All right, let's see what compiles and what doesn't compile at this point. The whole thing compiles. All right, so what's connected and what isn't connected? I've got commands. let's go look at the program and see what's been configured. Make sure that I configure everything that I can. Let's see, so what do I need? I've got to add in, correct. So we never create this guy in here. So from this position, I want to create this command line builder. I think I can make an extension method, maybe even move these things up a little bit. I'm not sure I have the right thing as the host and service, and who's the container and who isn't the container. But nonetheless, you'll see, we got 13 minutes left, so I'm kind of flying, but let's do a couple things inside this configure services here. So there's the command line builder that we're going to go ahead and build. We're going to pass in that service collection that we needed before. Here's the parser that we're going to build. So the command line builder comes back, and then we build from that. I could do this all in one line if I wanted to, by just say, I don't believe I use anything anywhere else. So I could do this like this. Like that, I believe. And then, let's see, what else do I need to register? We need to register that parser in the service collection. I don't see why we can't do it as a singleton. So add singleton, and I can just pass it in. He knows what he is, since he already exists. All right. And then that should give me a parser. So whoever needs or dependent on a parser, our loop is going to need to take in that parser, right? Auto completion handler we've got as well. And then the command line hosted service also. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now let's go figure out, our loop needs to take that parser in as a dependency, right? In order to use it, we're going to need a parser. And we're going to call it a parser. Yep, thanks for the help there. IntelliSense. And then I guess we need to import that. And then we need to assign it to something. Generate read-only property. Actually, I just want a private read-only field. All right, so now CodeMate cleaned that up for us a little bit. And now we've got a parser. So now that we've got this parser in there, and hopefully all the commands mapped to it, we come into this guy, and let's use that parser instead of just writing things out. Instead of writing things out, let's actually parse the guy. I'm pulling up the code here. So read the line, and then we want to do something else with it, right? Because the parser needs a collection of arguments being passed to it. So what are we going to do? We're going to take string array, which is the args that we're going to pass in, and we're going to take the line. Since I trimmed it, I don't know if it's possible for it to be null or not. But we're going to split based on space, and that should give me a collection split based on the space, right? Actually, why wouldn't readline.read, if it took the separator on there, you'd think it would have been automatically putting that out, right? This is a default's a string. password, but yeah, so that'll be interesting when we do the read, how we can do the password character for a specific input on a command. I don't know about that one. But for this, we're going to split this guy out. And now we're going to call the parser. Right? Let's do, since we're going to be running another command, let's go try catch block in here. This is where we were writing. Here instead, let's do the parser. Parser dot, I think we can invoke async or something like that. We want a result. Let's do, do I care about the result? I could get a result. So we're inside our own context. So typically this is back where you return 1 or a 0. But nobody's listening because we're in our own context at this point. So I don't think I care about the results. So let's just do this. Let's just use the discard. Discard and then parser. Let's pull parser in. Mark method async. Yes, and then we're going to invoke async, and I don't know why it doesn't like it yet. Okay, so parser and invoke async. Oh, that's a separate library. Invocation. Okay, so that would make it say if I found this thing, or no, this is saying given these args, go parse them, and it should give me back some results. Or no, it's going to invoke. It's going to actually go and look and invoke the thing, which is going to call our mediator handler, which is going to map. Yep. Okay. So I don't care about this console.write line anymore. And if I get an exception, what do I do? I don't know. I throw an exception that says something screwed up, I guess. And I get the. I don't need to return anything anymore because I have a wait in there now. All right. So that would be a try catch in there. What other thing do I want to do? Oh, they have another option here that says, that's a good idea. That gets us out of this stride. That if what we got doesn't exist, right? If you just basically hit enter at the command line, there's no reason to try to invoke that argument because there's nothing there. So we just do the continue. And now if I say, could move this up here. I could set it so where I have this exit actually be a command versus you just type in exit. This is a little preemptive here. A little simplified, I should say. Tab braces. So that becomes that, and I do an else, and I add braces here around this guy. Actually, might be a little cleaner to just say, nope, ask. Loop equals false and then continue. Continue basically says don't care about the rest of this, and then I wouldn't need this. Right? So you got two ways of getting out of this loop. One, if it says exit, you're going to continue, it's going to go back, and the loop's going to be false, so it'll just be done. But now this parser invoker is going to come here. Right now, the next trick, we've got a few minutes left, is this autocomplete handler on this get suggestions. Let's go look at that, because now we can actually take on this handler, we can do a parser as a property that's injected, right? So we can do that, and we can say control, oops, now we can bring this in, okay, and then control dot, should be able to generate constructor with the parser in it, and that gave me the parser. So now I can use this parser down here. Let's change this to block, and then inside that guy, now I've got this parser available. Parser.parse results gives me that, and then I can return suggestions that the parser gives us. Okay. Now, I typed a lot, stole a lot. Let's see if my code compiles even. Build one successful. Let's run. We got a crash because it's trying to open up the doc reader and file, and it doesn't exist because the project didn't create one. So you need to tell it to create one if this is going to work, and that is done by putting in the documentation file in here like this. So documentation file .bin target framework assembly.xml, so that should be where the same place that the thing ends up. Now rebuild to make sure that it builds it. Yes, stop debugging, couldn't rebuild if you didn't, so don't know why you asked. Okay. Alright, so rebuild all succeeded. Let's try to run. Let's see if we can get past that exception. Okay, so we got the freezing, and we've got the parser, system.command line, so we should be able to do ---- help. And we did get ---- help. Things got ugly on us quick, though, didn't they? I'm not sure why it bailed out of the loop. Exit with code 0. Not sure where time is up. You see that we printed the help command, usage, domain specific, version display, that they got from the parsed. Not sure why it exited the loop. I don't see why it would have. Let's run it again, and let's try for auto completion handler. Let's see what happens here. If this guy gets fired off, we should, right? If I type in, we know we have one command, the name of the command is sample, right? So if I type in SAM, hit tab, it should come in here, it should put SAM in there. Our parser.results, suggestions, notice it completed the sample. Now I should be able to hit space and do tab. Let's just tell it to run. Notice it gave me parameter 1, I hit tab again, parameter 2, tab 3, ---- version, ---- parameter 1. Then I can type in Bob, and then tab again, parameter 2, 4, tab again, parameter 3, 6. All let's do is has to be less than, so let's do 1 and see if we can get a. Alright, that's the error exception that we throw, which is what we expect. and parameter 3 must be greater than parameter 2. So you see we're going to get our validation, and so that's exactly what we want. Our exit command should get us out. Notice this one didn't get us out of the loop. I'm a bit curious as to why the default one did. Right, so I should be able to type in sample --v version. I don't know why that doesn't work. Sample --, it gives it to you as an option. I don't know why --, help. Again, they're all alpha software, but that's what you should see with the --, help. Seems to work pretty well. Nonetheless, this is coming along well. This system.command line, I don't know what the timeline for that being official is. It's still marked as experimental, but they're spending a lot of time on it, and there's people complaining about the experimental tab because some people are saying it's not experimental, which is it, right? But the namespace still has it in it. So I don't know when it's going to become an official part of .NET Core 3. Hopefully soon. I need to check up on the map. I've been using it because, well, I think that's the direction that they're going to go, and it's as good as any other command line tool. But as you see here, I'm inside the shell. We haven't left the shell. It's my own shell. So whatever state that I maintain in this case would be available for the next command. If I updated something in the DI or wherever I store it, heck, for that matter, I can have in-memory database just fine inside this shell that I can share things back and forth with. And IntelliSense is working, not IntelliSense, tab completion samples, so SAM tab works, tab minus parameter, yeah, 2, 3, yep, that's all working with the help. The version stuff is working. So in a relatively short amount of time, we've got an hour and a half. I cheated, of course, I did most of this before, but with an hour and a half, I get to show you where this thing is. So that was the goal. So there is a domain-specific shell. Now we have a bunch of sample commands. Other than these sample commands, we have real commands. Which what we're going to do is we're going to take the same thing with the Discord bot, what I'm planning to do, and use the Entity Framework database that's on my Discord bot to use these commands from the command line shell, and then simply just take the same situation and hold a hosted service for Discord bot, and then have the output from your, instead of your console, have that stream intercepted, and then you can type in these commands. You won't get tab completion because Discord won't give you that capability. But you could type in those commands into Discord and get your results to be fed back into Discord. So one could take your entire API and make it available to Discord, reading it all from standard mediator commands. All right, that's it for the day. That wasn't too bad. I like it better having something prepared and ready to go. We can cover a lot more terrain in a short amount of time, give you some idea. Blog post should come out later today or tomorrow morning with a little bit more details and links to the repo and so forth to follow up with the video. All right, thank you very much, and see you again next week, if not sooner.